is a charge of a sixth more, but there's details when it applies, when it doesn't apply. I don't know all the details that would be able to.
Yeah, I thought so. Like we're and not just across the board allowed to charge an unlimited amount.
Generally, there's a rule called a null, which means a sixth.
Six, yeah.
A sixth more, but it depends.
Yeah.
This can be combined, call different, all different types of exception rules. For instance, a 24-hour store, let's say, I'll just give an example. A 24-hour store can always charge more because for the type of service that they're giving, right? Their items, the market value for items in the 24-hour store, the same bottle of water will be more expensive, right? It's whatever. There's a lot more. I'm just throwing out a random example. But there could be something. There's another concept brought that the Chachamim should control certain things that are chayisha items. Sorry, yeah, certain items that are basic necessities. Yeah. They should keep. Should make sure that people don't the market. They should control the market value itself. It's not just about a specifically sellers selling it more expensive in general. It's such a when you continue. Yeah, good. Thank you. The Chazal continues. Sorry, what were we asking? How are you ready to in Rock Hill? Where's Rock Hill? Not sure. What's his name? Yossi? Oh, yes, it's my second cousin. Okay,
Thanks for drinking this time.
yeah. So we're ready? Sorry? A bit, yeah, but this is something inside, so we're gonna see clear how it's
Okay.
We're ready to start? Okay. So I'll just preface Bimakdim that like we've seen last time, and we spoke, what was it, Sunday? So these halachas are very there's many details. And every situation, really, when it comes to halach lamaisa, every situation it could always be another twist. Was there did they say a specific t'nai, a specific detail? Was there a shtar? Did they sign something? When did it happen? Is there a loss? What exactly is the loss? Is there a loss? Every case has a lot of details, and there's other halachas, the ones that we discussed explicitly. There's always there sometimes there could be other details, and sometimes someone doesn't realize that they made a kinyan. They thought that they didn't do one of the kinyanim that it pshicha or whatever, but they didn't realize that since it's accepted minig that let's say a handshake, let's say it's accepted in a certain industry that a handshake is considered solidifying the transaction, and so that could be an example where someone may not realize that he just made a kinyan. Halachically, that would be considered a kinyan, but he may not realize it. So, just saying that in general, there's a lot to know, and a lot. But at least we'll learn a few of the halachas. Actually, this concept with the kinyan, this handshake, is there's a mussar called setumta, which means that it was the minik, I think the time of Shas, that they would make a certain marking on the barrels, and they would sell it. And that was an accepted thing, that if you made a marking, you knew you gave it over. And from that, we learn out that in general, things that are done as accepted, kinyanim that are accepted in the industry and the society that solidify the business deal will be considered a kinyan. Yes, that was that's a derech hagav, but in general, and there's many details, and today we'll go through, at least for the first part, we'll just read inside a few different concepts. Each one we'll see. Most of it is from Shulchan Aruch. The first concept they also brought a Gemara, and we'll see each
Question for you on the topic of a business deal. If an owner says, "These are the terms of my deal," and he issues a contract to the buyer, is he allowed to halachically and not talking about American law, all of a sudden bring up new conditions?
That are not in the
Contract.
I would assume that not.
Okay.
Don't know all the details of that, but I would assume that not.
Yeah. Okay.
Because anything that you write in writing is binding unless it goes against halacha.
Okay.
Like an issa, unless it goes in, it's an issa.
Yeah.
If it's just in the nimamnis, it would. But again, that would be a different discussion.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start. We discussed the concept of mechusar amana, a lack of trustworthiness, and now we'll see how it plays itself out from the Gemara to the halacha. So the Gemara Bar Mitzvah brings in the middle of a discussion. The Gemara says like this: the Itmar, we learned. There's a discussion by the Amirayim that they discuss dvarim when there's a transaction which only has dvarim, only has words. There was no actual opinion. It was just we spoke about it. What's the din? What's the din if you speak about something, you make up to do something, but you didn't make any kinyan? Rav says that if in such a situation someone backs out, there is no lack of trustworthiness. But Rabbi Yochanan says yes. If someone were to back out, he would be considered untrustworthy. So you have machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, and we'll see later that Allah is passing like Rabbi Yochanan. That if someone makes a business deal on everything and they only have the word of mouth, there is no actual kinyan. There is a concept called mechusar amana, lack of trustworthiness, if they were to back out. And I mentioned last time that there's a machlokes rishonim, if it's a da'iraisa, if it's the rabbanon, if maybe there's even a chiyuv midin shamayim to pay back, even though in bezdin we won't be able to make you pay back, but since you're considered mechusar amana, since it's aser midin shamayim, we chayiv to pay money.
Some madama says at Shabbos when the Rabbi said the Aliyas, right? Says Shlishi 2 times 5. The person resident says 4 times 5. Somebody else says 5 times 5. That's it. Once you say in your mouth what 5 times 5, even though somebody else bought it for 6, you yourself.
You yourself are?
I don't like to say that.
Sorry?
If you said I want to buy the Aliyah for 5 times 5. And somebody else says 6 times 5. So
yes.
you gave it to the guy 6 times 5.
Right.
But since you already says I'm willing to give 5 times 5, somebody else bidding, you already have to have the fear to the power of the word, you are making you feel to obey.
So the thing is in that case,
but surely the word is so powerful.
right. So I'll tell you that's specifically to tzedakah.
Right.
Tzedakah, because there's a concept that Amirasi legavaya is kimisiras lahadit. A word, yeah. So whatever would be binding on by a mesida when it's between regular people, the the word. The reason why over there would also be different is because over there you have in mind, when you said it, everyone understands. You have in mind, like Abby knows, that you're only
going to say more.
Then it's nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
But
right.
since you already said that,
so you're saying there are those that said that already. Right. Okay.
I want to bring out the
power of words.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. I mean, it's accepted. Everyone understands that it's a given. It's a davar pasha that they'll be saying that there are those that say that even so, you said something to. Okay. In our case, we were talking about the regular mundane things, business deals, and you just said the word of mouth you agreed upon. So there's an isser. There's no chiyuv mammon. In Bezdin, they won't be able to take out any money. But there's isser, and it's called mechusar amana. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara asks a question on this discussion between Rabbi and Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara asks, Meisvei, Rabbi Yesi, Rabbi Yehuda, Eimer, Ma Talmud Leimer. What is the pasuk teaching us when it says Hin Tzedek? It says you should be honest and you should make sure that your measurements are correct. So the Gemara asks, early in the pasuk said Eifa, that you have to have your Eifa has to be tzedek, and the Eifa is a bigger measurement than the Hin. Right. So it's already included. Hin b'chal Eifa haya. So the Gemara says the Rabbi Yehuda says Darshan that what's the pasuk come to teach me? Sheyehei hein shelcha tzedek The Torah is coming to teach you that a word of mouth you have to keep. When you say yes, it means yes. When you say no, it means no. And Rashi explains, keep your word, and later on, make sure to keep whatever you said. So the Gemara wanted to bring a raya from this brayso that there's we have a pasuk that teaches the halacha of Rabbi Yochanan that the word of mouth, it's also to back out from the word of mouth. Rabbi says from this brayso there's no raya, even though it could be the halacha. We'll see later the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan, but he says no raya from this brayso. So why? What does this pasuk come to teach? What does this brayso come to teach? That you shouldn't speak one thing in your mouth, and you should have something else in mind in your heart. And Ashi explains, at the time you're talking, when you say what you're saying, you shouldn't have a mind to change. Meaning to say, we have two levels over here. And the Gemara is saying that the Brais is only telling you level number one. The Brais is saying that when you say your words, don't be a cheater at the time that you're saying it. When you're saying it, be honest. Only say what you mean. Mean what you say. Exactly. But Rabbi Yochanan is coming to tell you even more than that. Not just you have to mean what you say. Let's say later I want to change your mind. You were honest. You didn't lie when you said it. When you said it, you had a mind to keep it. But then later you changed. You changed your mind. So that Rabbi Yochanan is coming to tell you a second chiddush. Here we have. Yeah, it's true. So Rabbi Yochanan is coming to tell you another thing. Not just that when you say it, you should mean what you say. Later on, even if you want to change your mind, try to keep. There's a mitzvah and an isser to keep whatever you said. So as of now, we saw this concept of Mechus Hamana in the Gemara. Now we're going to see in the halacha. We're holding the second piece, Chesh, in the Shulchan Aruch. Yes.
Something goes in right on your versus the person. So that which this is that's the challenge in the audience. So no, still, that's the case. Whenever somebody against each other, their response to they done something.
So I'm not sure exactly all the details, but in general, even if you were to say the and this whole concept of tzedakah, you could. It's still.
And yes, it is. But it's not a business deal. It's he has to bid against somebody else fighting. A thing where everyone understands that it's a school of Manasseh. That's what this business.
So I don't know for sure. I can't say for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that even in such a case, it would still be considered. I'm not sure. But it's not exact. It's not. Our case is definitely. Okay. So now let's see this in Shulchan Aruch. So in the Siman Eish Dal of Mishpat, it discusses this halacha. So we're going to see the Sif Zayin, the Mechaber brings halacha. Then the Sif Yud Aleph, the end of the Siman, the Rama repeats this halacha, and we see how the Rama paskins, and then we'll discuss how the paskin after the Rama will paskin. So the Shulchan Aruch. So as of now, we see in the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan says that Dvarim, when you make up something by the word of mouth, there's an isser to back out. In the Yeshua Mishum Mechus Hamana, there's no Tviyas Mammon and Bezdin. Bezdin cannot take any money out. There's no Chiv Mammon and Bezdin, but there's an isser. So it says in the Shulchan Aruch, Haneisu and Neisu Medvarim. When someone discusses a business deal with just words, Bavad, Medvarim Bavad, Harei Zeh Ra'oi La'maid B'diburei. The halach is that he should keep his word. Even if he didn't take any money, and he didn't write it down, there was no contract. And he didn't put down any deposit or any. Sorry. Yeah, and even if you don't have any of these actions, even if it's just the word of mouth, you should keep your word. And everyone who backs out, either party, even though he doesn't get the klal of mishapara that we discussed last time, still he's considered untrustworthy, and the chachamim are not happy with him. Okay, so that's a simple halacha we saw in the Gemara in the halacha. Now we're going to go to Sif Yud Aleph, and in the Haggah, the Rama He's going to add a discussion. What's going to be in the case where I'm backing out because the price changed, which in the Lashon Ha'amah is going to be today tari. Tari means gate, shar. Two sharim. Two sharim means when the market just it changes. What happens if the market value went up or down? So let's look at Rama. Even though when you only have words without money, technically, halachically, you can back out and there won't be any tvias mammon and bezin. And ain't set up a kal mishapani, you don't get the klal. The halach is that the adam lamet b'diburim. Alpha pisha is also shum kinyan. Like varam ba'alma. And v'chol ha'chayis by bein lekech bein meiche einu cham nechimen. But then he adds in, V'hani mili, when do I say it's us to back out? B'chat tari, when it's the same price. Avo b'trei tari, but if now it's a second share, it's a second market value, the market went up or down, ein zeh m'chus amana. You're not considered m'chus amana, it's not a lack of trustworthiness, it's going to be mutter. Then says the Rama, that's one opinion in the Rishonim. But Yashayimrim, that's a little bit b'trei tari, even if the market value change, us to lachzer, v'im chayzer b'yeshem m'chus amana. And has it end off? He brings the two opinions, and he ends off is machriya v'chein nir ikr, and it seems the ikr l'chumra. However, like we mentioned last time, the shach right away brings a bach that says in Yerushalmi says not like this. So we have in the Babli the halacha that you're not allowed to back out from your words, but the Babli doesn't say clearly what's going to be if the price changes, if success change. So the bach brings that the Yerushalmi says clearly that in such a case it would be fine. And the Shach brings this back, and later on the Paiskim, the Sivis brings it, and some Sefer and other Paiskim are made to more lahakal. I'm not 100% sure about it, but I'm pretty sure that in most Paiskim, especially today, are more makel. Some were to ask of, and I made up with someone this and this to buy a certain object. I made up. We said we're going to do it. We thought we were going to go through the deal. And then the price changed. May I back out or not? So I think that most places would be Neikel Hakel. That's that. Like I said,
for the quail.
it's in either direction.
You go always to back up.
If it changed against you.
Against you.
Yeah, if it changed for you and you want back on it, for sure not.
Okay.
For sure not, yeah. But if it changed against you, it's exactly. It changed against you as long as there wasn't an actual kinyan, then I will say you're allowed it. It's no issue. And like we mentioned last time, this isser of mechusei amana and backing out and keeping your words, like I said earlier, subset. The Rais is subset. The Rabbanan doesn't say the Rais. Let's say that we learn it out from the pasuk that the Gemara brought from the Rais, from the Yisrael Yehuda, that the Gemara dash is hint tzedek. That's the extra word already. It says eifet tzedek. We need hint tzedek, so we learn from that you have to keep your words. Others say it's the Rabbanan. Okay, so that's that concept. Next. We discussed a concept called taremis. In certain cases, there's no mechusei amana, there's no isser, there's no concept of ein ruach hamnechem, but it's a concept of taremis. There's a complaint one on another. Okay, it's extra time. So, thank you. There's a concept of taremis. So we're going to see. We brought a piece of the Torah. The same thing says in the Shulchan Aruch, but I brought the Torah because he says it in a more understandable way.
The homes is always happen.
That's true. The question is, do we?
People are not happy.
Right, that's true. The question is it justified? Is it a justified taremis? Or is it just your own...
Something. You don't hear from justified, so only hear from non-helping.
Right. Like I was saying last time, it's an Rashi that says on the concept of taremis, that taremis means it'll be justifiable, it'll make sense that you have a tain on someone, you're bothered. In other cases you're bothered, that's your own issue. That's in these cases, halacha, Torah, the Gemara understands, in this case we understand why you're annoyed, So we'll see now in the Torah, two pieces two examples of taremis. Two cases. So the first case is a case of Sechiras Polim, hiring a worker. So he says like this, the Torah. Haseches a if someone hires a worker, either one that comes to back out, either the worker, the employee, or the employer, he has the permission to back out. And he explains how because the employer could say to the employee, find yourself a different job. And halachically, there won't necessarily be anything binding. There's nothing stopping him from backing out. And the poil can sit the get yourself a different worker. Even so, even though halachically, technically, you're allowed to back out, even so, since you're causing the other party a extra tircha, the other person is allowed to have taremis. Will have taremis, allowed to have taremis. And we explained last time that the Pashi you'd say that this halach is talking about a case where there's no issue of backing out on your words, because let's say the price changed, or other circumstances changed. And we already said that if the circumstances changed, a lot of the places we say you're allowed to back out. But even if you be allowed to back out, there's still this concept called taremis. He'll have tightness on you. And we said, like,
Need to have the price changing, or maybe the guy changed his mind.
right, so it doesn't say clearly. Some of the places, the smell, this halacha will explain that if the price didn't change, so we already learned.
Price of labor stuff.
So yeah, in this case it would be labor, because we're talking about we already said, the smell says, we already said, like we saw in the first part, that there's this concept called backing out. Back out. He says, here we're talking about where circumstances changed, and there's no issue of mechus hamana, there's no issue, but still there's a concept of taremis. Even if you have a heter, the Rabbi will give you a heter, he'll say that the circumstances change, or it doesn't only have to be the price change. It could be, let's say you wanted a job that only made sense in a certain situation, and you didn't change your mind out of preference. You changed your mind because it's something that wasn't in your hands, something you didn't realize could happen. So in all these cases, you have a heter. That's out of chasema. Right, I just want to express this idea that we said today tari, when it's two prices, when the price change you allowed, it won't only apply to price changing. It'll apply to anytime you have a good excuse. There's a valid reason. It's not that you change your preference. In all those cases, you would have a heter. But still, if you're causing the other person, a extra teirach, so you're talking a lot back out. You have to deal with yourself. You have to, you don't have to pay an extra price, but you have to know that you start a business deal, you cause someone a teirach. There's going to be a teirach. Now let's see another example. The next piece is from Simon much earlier. This is not about hiring workers, but this is Sechiras of renting out to rent a car or a van. In this case, it's renting out a boat. Sechiras is svina. Someone rents out a boat. One example is that in the middle of the way, he decided to unload the objects, load on more objects halfway through the day. Basically, he rented a boat for the day. So he gets to use it the whole day for whatever he wants. But the owner assumed that he's gonna start at point A, fill up, and then bring it to point B. And instead he added another stop and took some more merchandise. Or another case, that's the real gist. And in the middle of the way, he sold the merchandise to someone else. And he left, the first owner of the merchandise, and the buyer of the merchandise now came on to the boat to continue the journey and bring the merchandise to the destination. So he says like this. And basically, in both of these cases, you rent the boat, and in the middle of the job, you rent the boat for a day. In the middle of the job, you change over owners, or you change around the merchandise a bit. So technically, mitzat the money, there's no issue, because you're going to pay for the whole day. And if it changes over owners, you'll pay half of the day, and the second.
We're talking about the captain of the ship. He wants to get paid. So
the owner of the ship, the captain of the ship, yeah. So he's going to get paid. There's no issue getting paid, because either I'll pay the whole thing, or the second buyer of the merchandise will pay for the second half of the day, like he says. The first owner will pay for the first half, and then the second half will get from the second owner. So in regards to money for the journey, he's being paid. So there's no issues. But he says, but the owner of the ship has on the owner taremis, on the owner of the merchandise. The owner of the ship has on the owner of the merchandise taremis complaints because he caused him to the second person. Shadain lehergel, that he wasn't used to this customer. The chen kol kol and similarly will apply to everything else. Like the first case that we mentioned, the parka b'chati derech. Anytime you cause changes, there's a certain teremis. Rashi on this Gemara, so the Rishonim have different ways to explain. Shulchan Aruch just says the simple way, like somebody should learn that it's the idea of having to deal with another person. Rashi explains that on the another concept of what would be teremis. Now let's say you rent it for the day, but the guy shows you rent the boat for the day. So the owner of the boat, you tell him what the details of your journey is, and he assumes in his mind, okay, I'll be home by 4:00. But there's no, you didn't make up. It's going to be 4:00. You paid the rate for the day, but he assumed it's going to be 4:00. Then, because in the middle of the journey you're adding things, where you start making changes, he's coming home 5:00, 6:00. So even though technically, halachically, this is the price for a day, but still he has teremis because I was expecting to come home quicker and you made me come home late. That's what Ashi says.
What if he took more compensated for?
So then, yeah, probably that would be fun. Meaning, in general, this whole concept of teremis is very hard. It's very hard to explain what, like, it's not us, it's not like we're not calling it isser. It's not like you're not allowed to do it. You're allowed to do it. It's more of like it's
not nice.
It's not nice. So if you compensate, it's a very elegant thing to do. Yeah. So that I mean, it's hard to say that, if you pay, okay, so now it's meaning it's not like it was usher that now it'd be mutter, but it was never usher. But yeah, that would say that would seemingly be the right thing to do.
It applies to dirty terms also. Very short.
So I'm not sure. I don't know. You see all these halachas.
Horrendous.
I'm not sure. Not sure. I don't remember seeing it.
A difference.
Right. I don't remember.
Really from the beginning now. If somebody made a switch,
Right.
You I want to make sure the other guy want to make a switch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ain't it any? Yeah. In general, Gezel Akum is also, but right, it's not Gezel. We see Avedis Akum, you don't have to get back. I'm not sure. It's a good question. I'm sure it's Negel Lamaisa, saying if you're doing business with the guy. I'm not sure. Okay, so now the next, so until now we discussed where.
All the time they order Uber for somebody else. Right? So the Uber driver thinks that it's me and it's really you.
You think because of the star ratings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or he gets an order from me and somebody else shows up with the car.
Okay. I wonder if an Uber is such an accepted thing for people to do.
The guy already knows it.
Right. I mean, it's probably only in our communities that happens. Some people don't have a smartphone, but second, that's
Call Uber for somebody else.
right. I imagine in the Geisha world.
Again.
I call an Uber. I call you go. I call Uber for you. You want to go home, and I call Uber on my phone. So the driver thinks it's me.
Right.
There's the star ratings, and like
the driver's in the service. It says, "Well, it's gonna be gonna ride, not you."
No, yes. When you open the door, yes. Your name.
Yeah, you said. You said the name. I don't know if just the picture would make a difference. I'm not sure, but I think mainly there's ratings. There's ratings. I don't know how much the drivers actually look at the ratings, but it could be. You could say, I saw your 5-star rating, but you're giving me another customer. I don't know. No one ever rated him. Because on Uber, there's ratings if the customer. Yeah. For instance, yeah.
Let's just say that they told me you must give a.
Yeah.
Plus, I said, okay, so no one. So you lost the audience, so I don't care. You can't force me to put the must.
Right. But those things, they wrote it into the app, so like you would for sure. No problem.
Don't force me. Okay, that wasn't our one.
Yeah. Okay, so the next halacha is if they made a kinyan. Now, obviously, we know when it comes to masa matan, when it comes to buying and selling, a kinyan is everything, right? But over here, we're going to discuss a kinyan in regards to hiring workers. So it's a pashta halacha, but over here, the Rama brings it. He brings it like it's mentioned derech agav because it's obvious halacha.
But I've got a story about a hired worker. My wife and I hired a housekeeper, and we agreed on a price. And she decided that because she worked extra hard, or maybe because she got an extra worker, she wanted more. And when she finished working, and she refused to leave unless she received the money. Are we going to speak about a scenario like that?
That's not the main topic of our
Okay.
discussion. But that's definitely a good question.
Scam artists.
Yeah,
She lost the job.
but she wasn't invited back after that.
You're right, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But in such cases, you'd have to take into account, let's say in the middle of the day, you hired someone to do a job and they added another service. And it was in front of you, and they said, do you want also this? You have to, I'm saying every case has its
Yeah.
details, but that's not going to be our main discussion. So this halacha of a kinyan is sort of obvious, and it's understood, not just obvious, it's understood based on something we're going to learn soon. The next piece about if we started the work. But this halacha doesn't say clearly in the Mechaber and the Shulchan Aruch, but the Rama mentions it right away. He says it right away. So we see over here in Siman Shimon and Gimel, in the middle of Sif Aleph, right away the Rama says like this: V'yesh emrim, the im mashach. Now he says there are those that say, and he brings an example of something that those that say this is also considered a kinyan. But the concept is that a kinyan is for sure binding. He brings an example. Yes, this is considered a kinyan. He says like this: if you hire someone to paint your house, and he brings the tools, and the Baal Bayis picks up the tools. Now the tools are meant to clean the house. You're not buying the tools, so why would it be considered a kinyan? So he says yes, that this is a kinyan. Yes, the mashach Baal Bayis kli umnus she'isa b'hamalacha. That would be considered a kinyan. And what is considered a kinyan? Ain't a Baal Bayis Zajac. The Baal Bayis can't back out, and neither can the worker back out, because it's a kinyan. What's a kinyan? Can't back out. Now we have no word imukablan. We'll see soon that different types of workers, maybe a schiyayim, someone that's paid by the hour, he could always back out, even if there was a kinyan. We'll discuss that soon. That's he adds in the word specifically a kablan, which is not paid by hour, rather he's paid for the job. And the concept is that if you make a kinyan on the job, then the kinyan is binding. And he says, what would be an example that some say is considered a kinyan? If I pick up the objects, the tools, even though I'm not buying the tools, why am I picking it up? The fact that the owner picked up the tools of the worker, that's binding for the job. Okay. He says, if it's paid by...
It would make more sense. Worker picks up a tool. Which has
It's his own tools. Sorry? Right. Oh, good points. We're going to see in a minute. When he starts to work, you're right. We'll see that in a second. Very good. But now we're talking about before the worker picked up the tools to work. It was just sitting there and the Baal Bayis picked it up.
But what does that show? That doesn't show anything.
So that's what Yeshem says. Correct. So that's what he's coming to Mechadish. But the fact that the owner picks up a very good point. That he's coming to Mechadish, coming to teach me the fact that the owner picked up the tools, even though he's not doing any of the tools, he's the owner. What is he doing with the tools? The fact that he picks up the worker's tools, that would be considered kinyan on the job. On this
Like agreement that I'm willing that you do the job.
and it's binding, yeah. That's the chiddush, because the tools have nothing to do with the owner, like he said. That's what he's coming to teach. But if the worker started using the tools, that's for sure. We're gonna see in a minute what you're saying. But if it's a worker that's paid by the time, paid by the hour, paid by the day, yachal lachzer. We're gonna learn later on that he could always back out. We'll see soon. Okay. So if you make a kinyan, over here it's not anymore an isser. Over here, like we said earlier, that if it's only words, it's an isser to back out. If it's a kinyan, then you can't back out. It's binding. You have a tfias mammon. Okay. Not just if you did a kinyan, we're going to go learn now in the next piece that even if you didn't make a kinyan, the fact you started working, that alone is binding. So let's see what it says in Shulchan Aruch. It says like this. Yeah. The piece that starts the piece that starts of a hochum. Yes, he says, Aval hocha chamar. Let's say you hired people that they're transporters, delivery men. Chamar. You hired delivery men, Aval hocha chamarim. But if the delivery man showed up to the job site where they're supposed to pick up the stuff, and they didn't find the produce that they're supposed to transport, or a different example, Polim, you hired workers to water your field, and they show up to the job, you say, you can't do the job anymore, it's wet, it rained. Oh, I guess it wasn't the other example was an example, you hired them to plow, and it was wet.
Now there would be they call someone to fix my roof. Move the day it's raining. Can't do it.
Yeah. Or you hired them to water the field, but it's flooded. So in all these cases where the worker shows up to the job, he shows up to the job site, and once he shows up to the job site, then we see that the job falls apart. In such a case, it's binding, even though there was no kinyan. The fact that he started, he showed up, it's binding, and therefore, you owe them money, but you only pay them like a pale bottle. We'll discuss in a few minutes what's the concept of pale bottle. But the idea is that once you start the job, it's already binding and you can't back out. And if you back out, you're not allowed. If you back out, then you have to pay. We'll see soon that you only pay a bit less, but you have to pay. It's interesting, the Lashon is Holchu, that they went. The Lashon, the Gemara, the Mishnah, is Hischila Malach, he started the job. Like we were saying, started the job. But in the Rambam, in the Shulchan Aruch, say Holchu. You don't actually have to start the job. The fact that he's traveled to the job site, that alone is already binding.
Can't start the job because the job's not.
Right. Yeah. So even in the case where he couldn't start the job, he just traveled to the job site. Now, I just want to point out, in these cases that the Shulchan Aruch is discussing, he didn't back out because he changed his mind, right? He backed out because circumstances weren't up to him, right? In such a case, had there not been any kinyan, there wouldn't even be mechusar bala. It would be mutter to back out. It's not up to you, not right. But over here, since this is not any more a concept of words, this is a concept of a kinyan, of starting, such a case, it's binding no matter what happens.
It's very different.
Unless,
It's a pile.
sorry?
It's very different. It's a pile. It's different.
The owner backed out.
Whatever it is, it's different than the first case. Though it's a business deal that price went up, the price went down. That's not the Zalman. Over here, it's a pile. You guys come in because you told him to come.
Right, but we said that if the circumstances changed, let's say the price changed.
He doesn't know about the circumstances. Your field, you should know what's in your field before you call him.
Exactly. That's exactly 100%.
It's not a rain because of rain. And they told
Right.
you. It's not a price difference. It's your field. The circumstances of your field, not your need.
Yeah, but why are you backing out from the job? Because you changed your mind, or because it
If I'm
flooded?
working, I can't plow anyways. What am I gonna do?
So, meaning to say, it's not. You're not backing out without a
I
good
don't want
reason.
to back out. Right. I don't even
Right.
want to back out.
So, meaning to say like this: if you were backing out for no good reason,
Right.
so then if there was no kinyan, you would be considered
So-
chusaman. But in such a case, like you said,
I'm not backing out. I just
right? 100%. So you wouldn't be. You wouldn't. It would be mutter to back out. Did I say
well,
opposite?
you're not mutter because you still have to pay him as a
Oh.
public.
Why do you have to pay him? Because it's not anymore word of mouth. There's actually a kinyan.
What's the kinyan?
Let's say you warned him, you called him
It's
up.
never a kin by a player.
Oh, let me just say, I'm not sure if this will answer your question. What happened the night before? He found out that it flooded, and he calls up the worker and he says, "I'm backing out because it flooded."
He doesn't have to pay him as a power buffer.
Exactly. Exactly. The only reason he's paying
Shut up.
because he showed up.
He's
Correct.
your worker. He's not as your worker. They listen to your command.
Right, and he showed up. And since he showed up, it's binding.
If I tell you what to do and you do it, so I have to pay you.
Right.
When I did a business deal, I never told you to come here and I'm going to give you the dime.
Oh, right, because there was no start of the work. 100%. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah. But basically, what I'm saying, it could be. I don't know if I'm understanding exactly what you're saying. I mean,
We're agreeing.
right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, the concept like this: if it's any scenario where it's only word of mouth, so there's a discussion. If you have a good excuse, it's mutter. If there's no good excuse, it's mechossaman. It's also.
Well, it's not shavuos. Meaning we all agree that if the price goes up, things have changed, and you would agree that if you were me, you would have also backed up. And it's a mutual understanding.
I hear what you're saying. You're saying a good point, but like we said earlier, there's a machlekes. The Rama actually wants to be machmer.
Yeah, because the plus I'm not.
Right.
Because you give me a word, I don't care about the price. I locked in a
Right.
price.
But other places will make. They'll say since there's a good reason. Right. So as long as there's no kinyan and there's a good excuse, it's mutter to back out. There's no
understand when
mechossaman.
to make a business deal, but things change in real estate. The next day could shoot up, and you told me you're going to sell me the property. I would have. It's mechasamana. Right. That's the understanding. Understanding is
That's why.
Right. But if the price change and there's no mechossaman, because the price
right,
change.
because you would also you didn't do kinyan, so you would
Right.
also back.
Correct.
So but over here, the guy shows up because he told him to. So it's very different. Meaning, like he's doing.
It's different because he showed up.
No, it's different because he told him to do something and he followed your instructions.
Right. But if he didn't follow the instructions, he didn't show up. 100%. Very good. Meaning to say, because before he showed up, it's Elam Adibur.
Right. It's not different. He didn't do anything that.
Correct.
He didn't do anything to me.
And the business is low. So if I just make up that I'm going to buy it, then he didn't do anything. So I didn't do anything. Just Elam
We have an
Adibur.
agreement. We're at the final deal.
But
We both agreed.
so by the job also, we discussed that we're going to make the job. We discussed which color we're going to paint
Job
it,
is
and then
to show up. That's
and paint the walls, and and
right, but that's a compliment. Comes different. But let's say
that's the same. Why would it come?
I'm paying you to do the job.
Okay.
You understand that if you don't do the job, I'm not paying you.
Correct.
So it's not like it's not a pile that I told you to come here and come to my office. Not you sit in my office.
But why didn't he do the job? Because he didn't want to do the job, or because I didn't offer him the job. In this case, when the field flooded, it's on my shoulders, not on his shoulders.
I tell my workers all the time, come to my office and just show your pretty face. I'm paying you to be here. And if you listen to me, I pay you. Nothing to do with what you're doing at my job. I just want you here. I want you here every day, 9 to 5. The guy says, I'm not doing anything. I said, I don't care if you're not doing anything. I told you to be here, you're here. So I'm paying you.
Okay, so in such a case where you're telling him to come to do nothing,
Not doing nothing. I'm saying I need you.
Right, as need. Right, as need.
The customer's not here right now, but I want you here because now I got customer could come in. So I want, if in my mind, I'm in show, and if I don't know if you're there, it's worth for me to have a guy there paying $10 an hour from 9.
Yeah, for sure. So in such a case,
He shows up and the gate's down, and the thing's locked. I'm not gonna pay him. No.
Oh, for sure. Why? Because he showed up.
Right.
But let's say you told him the night before that the gate's gonna be locked. I can't open the door.
I'm doing it for me.
Very good.
But it's different than a business deal where I said I'm gonna give you something, and then overnight the stock market shoots up, and the real estate shoots up, and then you're backing out a deal because it's the loss season.
So in the case that you're discussing that it shoots up, right?
Right.
We say that most of the places say since it's a good excuse, you can back out, right?
Not really, it's not someone.
But if there's a good excuse,
We both agree that
right.
we understand that until we lock down a deal with money, then it's nothing.
Right.
When you buy a mortgage,
100%. So in the case of the store, the same thing. If he didn't show up until the day that he shows up, he can back out, and there's no Zalman.
Right. That's very different. I find
Sorry. Meaning, if you back out because you know that it's because you heard that it flooded.
Right.
We all agree that if it flooded, it flooded. I mean, are you asking? Listen,
if you showed up, then I'm gonna have to pay you. You didn't show up, then
but if I tell you the day before that it flooded,
you never were loyal for me.
we made up. It was we made up the business deal. We made up
that tomorrow you will come, but I don't want you to come anymore.
Okay.
I didn't change my deal. If
what happened last night?
Over here, it's also backing out of the business deal.
And now I told him, no, I can't because I'm coming to you. So now I'm losing. I could have gone to another job.
If it's losing, we're discussing losing. If it's losing, we're going to discuss soon losing. Let's try to.
Somebody called me and I said, no.
In that case, that would be a different case. Let's try to discuss what is no loss.
There's no loss.
Let's discuss. In a minute we'll discuss loss. Let's make believe there's no loss.
Right.
What would be the law if there's no loss? So, like we said, it's all the same rules. If there's a good excuse and there's no kinyan, you can back out.
Right.
If there's no good excuse and there's no kinyan, it's machos hamana. If there's a kinyan or they show up to the job, then it's already binding. So each would have to apply it to a business deal, to a pile, but it's all the same rules. It's word of mouth has to be kept unless you have a good excuse. And once there's a kinyan or you show up to work, then it's binding. It's all the same concepts, no?
I find it different, but I'm saying
Where would you see in which two cases?
The circumstances of the agreement is that when I hire you and you don't, and the agreement is that you're going to come to my office at 9 a.m. If you come at 9 a.m. and this door's it's flooded or whatever it is, you came at 9 a.m. You did what I told you to do.
Right.
On a business deal, so it's a mutual understanding of how the business world works. So the business world works. So when the Yid says something, that his word is holds weight. That's how the Jewish business has always been word. We don't rely on stars. We only use stars to back up what we're saying, not shot that it never disagrees with what we're saying.
Right.
We only use it just to be clear. Every Jewish business is just the star is not like it's not the kinyan. It's just to clarify what we're
doing. The understanding is that the word you're trusting the word of mouth, and if it changes, then you'll back out.
Right. If it changes, we always agree that things change until we actually have it in writing.
But it's all going to follow the same concept. That if you have a good excuse, right, it's all the same idea. If it's take tari,
even if the guy shows up in the flood, it's not a good excuse anymore because the guy showed up.
It's more that over there. There's already a kinyan. Showing up is basically like making. It's as if you made a business deal and you signed a contract. Showing up is like signing a contract.
Why? Why? Because you did what I told you to do.
And you did an action. An action is a kinyan. Yeah, it's like a kinyan. That's what it is. Meaning the difference between the business deal and the showing up is that here it's just word of mouth. Right. And the word of mouth understands that if it changes, it changes. Or if you sign the contract, even if the price changes. Very good. So if you show up, that's a kinyan. That's right. Meaning the fact that he did what you said, that is the kinyan, basically, essentially. Okay.
No, that's said by mortgage, buy a mortgage for the house. You have two options. Fix, or depends on the rate.
Correct.
Why? Because they know why change.
Right. It's for sure.
Correct.
Right.
Even if I fix, I might lose.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So with it's in a mortgage. It's probably the case you have the least of issues because every detail over there is written down. They deal with every detail. It's very hard to whether it's locked in. Probably.
I'm trying to concept.
Right. The concept. Yeah.
Change.
They could change. Right.
It's true. In a case where somebody signs the contract, he makes the kinyan, and let's say the person is buying a house, and let's say the owner's trying to be sneaky, and he doesn't tell the buyer that the house underneath the house, there's a lot of water. There's a whole pool of water, and the person brought his architect in, but he missed it. It's deeper. Number one, does the seller have the responsibility to reveal this from a law perspective?
I don't know the details of all this.
And secondarily, in this case, even if the buyer purchases the house, would he have the right to sue and back out?
So I'm not sure the details of all these.
Okay.
There's a lot more into that situation because on the one hand there's a signed contract. On the other hand, there was something that wasn't included in the contract. The basic. That would maybe be a mekachtas. Yeah. That may be a clear mekachtas. A signature doesn't help if you lie. Yeah, it doesn't.
Most lawyers will say as is, so then you can't say it. I know.
Yeah.
You have to do due diligence.
As is.
As is.
As a concept that basically means
You have to do your own research. Do your own drill.
okay. So then that would be included. Right. Okay. So we're discussing employers and employees. If you hire someone, could you back out? When could you back out?
For example, somebody hire you to if who can back out the employer.
So we're discussing both. So sometimes an employer, sometimes an employee.
For example, somebody hire you to play for Hassanet or someone, and 2 hours before the show, he calls you and says, "Finito, I don't want to." You lost, right? Because
But they have to pay 30% or whatever.
no, he didn't pay anything. He just told you you come to play these days, right? And then he
Correct.
goes, "Oh, what happened? You lost one,
Like
right?"
lose your deposit, but you also might be able to ask him for the full pay.
So we're discussing if you made a law. So maybe I'll just
I took a 30% non-refundable deposit.
Besides non-refundable, but
So
also the
we
full
have to
payment.
talk about
Right. 70%. Yeah.
right. So I'll just recap quickly what we spoke until. We spoke that in general, if there's a word of mouth without any signature, without any kinyan, in general, you cannot a word of mouth. You're not allowed to back out. If you hire someone by word of mouth, you say, "I'm going to hire you," and we all agreed that we all understood that that's it. You're showing up. You're not allowed to back out. However, if the situation changes, let's say the price changes, if the price changes, etc., or some circumstance change, a good excuse to back out, then it's mutter to back out. However, once there's a kinyan, if the worker shows up to the job,
Kenyan or minus
you make that would be an example. That would work as a kinyan in this case. If you we said if the owner, if the employer picks up the objects, the tools of the employee, of the worker, picks them up, that also would be considered a kinyan. Basically, if there's any action that it's not just any more the word of mouth. Sorry?
that indicates
The job, a solidifying of the job, then you wouldn't be able to back out. That's what we discussed on.
that.
Now,
Thank you.
sorry. Yeah, so now we're holding Siv base in the category with Skill and Malacha. So Siv base. Sorry?
First page.
On the first page. The second last paragraph on the first page. V'im holku.
Oh, something.
So now there's going to be a little bit of he's going to add a detail over here. So we discussed that if you started the Malacha, you can't back out. So he adds like this. V'im holku. If they went, he repeats the same Malacha Siv base, the Mechaber, and he writes, Afa pishali meitzim lahaska atzmam emesh. Even though at the time when you called up this worker to hire, he didn't have any other job opportunities, right? So he didn't lose any money. This is what we're stressing. We're talking about a case where you didn't lose any money. Because when I called you to hire you, when I called a painter, he didn't have any job opportunities. So obviously mates lahasker atzmam emesh, even though yes he didn't have what to hire himself, neislam kischarim kapel batum. You still have to pay them. You still have to pay the worker. Even though there's no loss. Why? Because since he went to the job site, it's considered a kinyan. It solidifies this deal, and it's binding. But he adds, this is all talking about all this that we said, that once it's binding, you can't back out, and if you back out, you have to pay. This is all talking about that right now, they can't find themselves another job. But if at the time, when you show up to the job, there's still enough time in the day, if he still has a chance to be hired by someone else, he only has, like we said earlier, the concept of a complaint, but there's no actual monetary demand. Why? Because that once we make a kinyan, the owner is mechuyev to pay. What's he mechuyev to pay? He's mechuyev to make sure he gets his parnas. He's mechuyev to make sure he gets his money. But he's not mechuyev to actually hire him. So if there's no other job opportunities, he's going to have to hire him in order to pay. And if he doesn't give him a job, he's going to have to pay him like a pale bottle, which we'll discuss in a minute. But if he has other job opportunities, he could say, "Take, we made a kinyan. Take, I'm mechuyev to make sure you get money. But go, you have other job opportunities, you can make the same money." The kinyan wasn't on this job. This is what we're saying. We're saying a chiddush. The kinyan wasn't on this job. The kinyan was on the schayvus that you should make sure you get your money's worth, to make sure you get your livelihood. If you have an opportunity now to go to somewhere else, I'll tell you, go and take another job. I'm trying to finish the paragraph. And what happens in the case where you hired him to paint your house for $500? Then it comes a day and you say, "I don't want." You showed up to the work, but I don't want. But you could go down the block, someone's looking for someone to paint. But the guy down the block is only going to pay $400. So he says, I'm losing $100. So in such a case, you send him to the other place. The other person will pay him $400. And you have to pay the difference. So he goes to the other job and you pay the difference. Because you're mechuyev to make sure to pay him whatever you made up. If you hired someone for $500 and you made a kinyan, you're mechuyev to make sure you get $500. Yes.
Let's use this example. Contractor painted $500. That comes down and I don't know. Let's say he can make the same. Let's say he can make the same 500. Yeah. What about the fact he didn't come down for the service call? He didn't spend time looking at his calendar. Nice travel 30 minutes, or even if they
So in such a case, there would be a concept. So, like we said earlier, that would be considered untrustworthy. Meaning, what we're discussing now is: do you have to pay money? Is there a monetary tvia? Do you have a monetary demand in Bezdin? Could you demand money? Sorry?
meaning if he was just schlepped out of his way.
Meaning, if it's just a question of having to come down for no good reason, so it's not a monetary demand. That's would be considered, like we said earlier, we consider untrustworthy. It may be usher, and if you have a good excuse, maybe it would be mutter. If you have a good excuse for it, you schlepped him down. But yeah, just like he schlepped down, something changed in my situation also I couldn't control. So, Lagabi the money, if you can make money other ways, then you're not machuyev money. But in regards to what you're asking, that you schlepped him down for no good reason, so there's the concept of teremis. There's a concept that we said there's grievance. There's
if they made up that it's service costs $140, he doesn't do anything. Then he has to pay $140.
Correct, because over there you're not paying for the job. You're paying for showing up. Like you showed up. It's generally like that's a good point you're mentioning. That a lot of the time service calls you're not actually paying for the job. You're paying for showing up. So in such a case,
the actual job,
yeah,
the actual $10.
Right. You made up to. If you can make money somewhere else, that's irrelevant to the actual. That's a very good point. It's right. Very practical. Okay, so this is all. If there's a kinyan or they showed up, the owner can't back out. Now we're going to go. What's about the opposite? Could the worker back out? What happens if you started the job? Could the worker stop in the middle of the job? So again, let's make believe, as now we're going to discuss, let's make believe that there's no hefsid, there's no loss of money, right? And soon we're going to discuss a case where there's loss of money. Until now we're going to discuss there's no loss of money. Right, we're going to discuss if the worker backs out. Obviously, if the worker backs out and then your house gets messed up somehow and you loses value, we're not discussing. We're discussing a case where, let's say you paint half, and you could hire someone else to paint the other half. That's not going to look different. It's not going to make any loss. That's what we're discussing. A case there's no loss. So he says like this. The worker started the job, but the worker backs out. Now we're not talking about the Balbais anymore. We're talking about the worker, the employee. He's allowed to back out. Even if you paid him in the beginning of the day, you hired a worker to paint your house, and you paid him $500 in the beginning of the day.
Never do it like business. Never. Don't pay nobody doing things.
But in this case, you never. But what happens if he did, and he gave the full amount, and the guy, not only that, the guy already, in the middle of the day, he already managed to spend the money. He doesn't really look. He lost the money, that's it. He says, I'm broke. He already gave off the money in the middle of the day. He can back out. But he owes money. Why does he owe money? Because true, the employee, the painter is allowed to back out in the middle of the day. But he's only going to be paid for half a job, right? So if he paints half the house, he could take it back out, but I only owe him $250, not $500, right? So if I give him $500 in the beginning of the day, and he only did half the job, he owes me $250. Now what happens if he doesn't have the money? So he owes me money, but he's still allowed to leave. Because the halacha is that a worker is not allowed to be a worker that's being paid by the time, by the hour. He's not allowed to be locked in. He can't be an eved. He can't be an eved is someone that his time is given over to someone else.
Freelancer.
A freelancer gets paid by the job.
I mean, he's not by worker, but
Right.
let's say, hey, that's half the job. Someone else is going to charge $600 for a full job. Half the job is $300. The Balabais is now at a loss of $50.
So I hear what you're saying. So that would probably be included in what we learn later about a loss, but I'm not sure about that.
It's not a
That's a good
capital. This is an arrow.
So let's see in a second. Actually, so we said earlier. No, we brought it earlier. We said the last time in the Gemara there's a machlekes about it. I think that Amma mentioned this earlier. I think in one of the pieces, in the first piece about Asu Kinyan, that Amma discusses this. But a kabbalah can't back out. But it's actually machlekes apeskim. So I'm not passing that kabbalah back out, but it's machlekes apeskim. The Gemara already discusses. Do we see a kabbalah is considered? Because in a way, a kabbalah is working for the money. He's working for himself. When it's your time, you're not a balabas. When it's not your time, you could do whatever you want.
Right.
When it's the job, I could do by night, I could do every day, I could do whatever I want.
Somebody to play the wedding, right? For 4 hours. After 2 hours, I say I don't want to continue playing. Why they do that?
Very good. You notice that we'll see. A good point. We're going to discuss such an example in a second. But we're going to see an example in a second.
From the foil point of view. No,
Right.
what do you mean?
By the way,
You don't have anything to do that.
Have to get someone to cover that's at least as personal as him.
So we're going to see. The Shulchan Aruch is going to speak about such a case. We're going to see if we try to.
by the way, on the topic of weddings, my sister.
This is the case that you're discussing. Is a Gemara. The Shulchan Aruch discusses this case.
On the topic of weddings, my sister ordered flowers to be decorated on the chuppah, and the florist gave a quarter of the flowers they promised.
All right.
Yeah. So
this is going to be a later discussion. Let's see if we can just finish this piece inside. So he says, why can't you say that a worker can't back out? So he says like this: the Gemara in Bava Metzia Darshans, it says in the pasuk Kli b'nei Yisrael avadim. The Gemara Darshans v'lo avadim lavadim, but they can't be slaves to slaves. So therefore, a person cannot have his time given over in a way that for these 10 hours he can't back out. He's locked in. A yid is not allowed to be locked into another yid. That's the halacha. Now, there's a very interesting. This is just an very interesting point in the next page from the Ramah he brings. The Ramah brings like this. Very, very interesting. An example. It's on the second page, the beginning of the second page. He brings an example of what would be considered something that you're not allowed to do because you're not allowed to be an avid. So he says, "Umay high timer." For this reason, you're not allowed to be an avid. Asur lapoyel. It's also for a worker. Afil malamed a sefer, even a teacher or a sefer. Lahasker atzmai, to rent himself out, to hire himself out. Liyes bebayis balabayis, to be in the house of the owner of the employer. Bekeva shleisha shanim, for 3 years.
Can do a contract.
Sorry,
Can do a contract.
a contract you could do. He says only liyes bebayis balabayis, only if you're living there.
What a contract could be in the guy's house.
Oh, to be in the guy's house. Yeah, correct. Sorry,
I'm not understanding this.
it's also to hire yourself out to live in the house of the employer for 3 years.
You're a music teacher for a family for 3 years and you move it.
Was it?
You're a music teacher for a family and you move in for 3 years. So now I'll do it. Now lock yourself down for 3 years.
Person's not allowed, even if
So a person's not allowed to. Halachically, it's also for a yid to sell himself as a slave. We'll discuss in a minute that there is a hatim, but me'ikra din, the whole concept of an avid ivri is aser. Me'ikra din. In a normal situation, a person's not allowed to make himself a slave. So the Ramaz Mechadish, he brings from the guy Smartcha Chiddush, that not just a real slave, 6 years, even just 3 years, and it's not really a slave. You're teaching, yeah. You're not a full laborer. You're just teaching. To put yourself in someone else's house for 3 years to teach, that alone is already problematic.
That's the whole concept of an epidemic that he's so hung up on money that
Oh, and what's the whole concept of David? There's a heter. If someone's so poor that he can't make ends meet,
So the business.
that's one example. And the other, the heter to sell himself. There's two. There's always two concepts of everything. The heter to sell yourself is if someone pasha can't make ends meet. So there's a heter. If you can't pay for anything, there's a heter to make yourself an abbot. In such a case, it'll be mutter for someone to hire himself out to live in the house of the employer for 3 years. But we see it's interesting, this concept, this like example that Amma brings, like an interesting example. We wouldn't think today that it could be a case of
People hire shiksas all the time. Or whatever. They hire like helpers in the house.
that live in for 3 years. Okay.
I'll lock them down. Say I'll
Yeah.
pay weekly.
especially for his own benefits. He thinks it's his own benefit to do it.
So if the person could make ends meet without it, it's awesome. That's what he said.
That's me, but he thinks it's my own benefit.
So that's
Let's
the-
say he has a benefit. He has a mansion. I just live in a brothel.
So that's what the Torah is telling us. That's the Rambam is telling us. The Torah says that you may think it's better, but the Eibusher wants Yidden not to be sub.
Live nice though.
Yeah, not to be given over to another Yid.
this one,
A guy would be different. A guy would be much.
this one, if the Rabbi is needs major construction in the house, someone, a contractor, won't be able to make a deal, I'm doing your house rent free, and I'll be doing the work for you
For 3 years? If it's for 3 years, it says
for
that,
however long.
so that's-
it's done.
so
Since that will be outside.
if it would be for 3 years. They say that 3 years we learn out. The Paiskim say that 3 years we learn out is a certain kfiyas and it would be us.
I mean, 3 years is
It's just it's like
No, they explain it specifically 3 years. There's a specific thing about 3 years. If it's less than 3 years, then
less than 3 years, then
it would be mutter.
wow.
Why specifically?
They bring a pasuk in Yeshaya that it says "Miksei shalosh shanim kishnei safir." They learn that more than 3 years would be considered a abdus.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, so I think it's already to have to stop here.
It's very interesting.
I believe it. Okay, go.
Awareness.
Should we stop now? Should we continue?
We don't have the two people. It's
What time is the minyan across the street?
10 o'clock.
Okay, so we can stay for
Right.
9:45.
That's right. So you see that. Or if you let two little become ones, two little become. Another person comes out. Oh,
You could go do it. Don't worry.
we'll figure it out.
We could go out.
Go hold it.
We could go across the street.
Don't hold the numbers.
what if you get another person?
We don't have a person now, so you're not.
Listen, if you go out and you see someone if you could go outside and see something, but if not, then I guess. Oh, there's someone here? Somebody upstairs? Number 10?
Well, did that scenario with the band really happen at the wedding, with the middle of the wedding, they left?
There's so many contracts at the past that are taken.
Really?
They write everything before, you're not sure it's time.
Yeah.
You have to bring this.
Oh, so this is the question. This halacha that a yid is always allowed, can never be locked in. How we have to know how it would apply if you sign the contract, not like it. Not sure. However, in the case of the musician, it could be that it's not considered a sachir. Maybe it's considered a kablan. Yeah, sure. And if he's a kablan, then we brought earlier in the earlier piece in the Ramah, you'll see in the piece, the Asu Kinyan, the first piece under Asu Kinyan, the Ramah says that imu v'lo yapayel imu kablan. That maybe the kablan can't back out. It's only someone that's being paid by the hour. So it could be a musician will always be able to back out because you're not being paid by the hour. You're not being hired for the whole day. You're being paid for the job. So maybe not necessarily. Meaning, you have to know how you look at it because even though the simcha is only a certain amount of hours, but it's like a profession. You bring music to the chasna. It's not necessarily a day job. No. So I can't if you can.
So now we have exactly 10. You understand with us? Go outside. Who is the outside? Yoeli is there, right? Yeah. I'll be a husband. No, no, with you with them, exactly.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, yeah.
That was
Thank you.
fantastic.
Yes.
I remember